Okay, this one's going to talk about number lines and real numbers. So a couple of things I want to talk about is square root. Square root, it means a number times itself to get a new number. The symbol that you use, we typically call that the radical symbol. It doesn't mean it means to square root, but it's called a radical. Okay, so you can look that up in your words to know. But the first problem here is what's the simplified form of each expression? So the square root of 81 is equal to 9. How I do that on a calculator is real simple. I just go ahead and grab my calculator and I can go second, and I'm going to hit the x squared button, do square root of 81, and then I just hit enter, and I get 9. And another way to think about it is 9 squared, or 9 times 9 gets you 81. When you're looking at part B you have the square root of 9/16 equals 3/4. I can grab my calculator, and I can go second square root, in parentheses, 9 divided by 16. Now if I do 9 divided by 16, it should give me an answer of 0.75. If I hit the math button on my calculator and hit enter for frac, it will give me 3/4. Now see, that takes too long. I could just go ahead and use my head and know that the square root, so when it has the square root of 9/16, I can write that as the square root of 9 over the square root of 16. And I know that the square root of 9 is in fact 3, and the square root of 16 is 4. Does that make sense? So why don't you try to figure out what the square root of 64 is on the got it, and I'll see you back here in about 20 seconds. All right, here's a problem. Estimating the square root. Sometimes it makes more sense to guesstimate. So this picture that I have here is the picture of a lobster eye. So lobster eyes are made up of tiny little square regions under a microscope. The surface of the eye looks like graph paper, kind of like what you see here. Scientists measures the area of one of the squares to be 386 square microns. What is the approximate side length of the square to the nearest micron? So what they're saying is this entire big square right here is 386 square microns. So really, if you think about it, this is an x by x square, or the area is x squared equals 386. So how do I figure out what the side length of one of the squares of the lobster eye is? And the easiest way to do that is to use my graphing, or use my calculator, and I just go ahead and I punch this. So to get the x by itself, I take x is equal to the square root of 386. Now the square root of 386 is not a pretty number, so I'm just going to grab my calculator and I'm going to go second square root 386. And I hit enter, and I get 19.64, so I could say approximately 19.64 microns. I don't know what a micron is, but it sounds pretty cool. So why don't you take a shot and try to figure out what the square root of 34 is to the nearest integer. Now, in case you forgot, you got it. An integer is basically a whole number. So figure out what number square root of 34 is closest to. Got it? Okay, cool. So we're going to talk about classifying real numbers. Now, when you talk about the real numbers, there are a lot. So I just kind of want to talk to you about real numbers. Here's a nice little thing. Real numbers is every number you can think of. So you got the reals, okay? Then it branches out into the irrationals and the rational numbers. Now, rational numbers are fractions, decimals, whole numbers, and then the rational numbers branch out into integers, and then those go into whole, and then those go into natural. So a real number is any number that you can think of, no matter what. A real number is any number that you can think of. Every number inimaginable is there. Irrational is a number like the square root of 3, pi. Those are irrational. Rational numbers are 4, 3, 3/5, square root of 4. Numbers that you can write as a fraction. Integers are 1, 2, 3, 0, -1, -2, right? Whole numbers are like 0, 1, 2, 3, and natural numbers are just 1, 2, 3, etc. So hopefully that makes sense. So when you talk about classifying um, numbers, when you talk about classifying real numbers, you want to think of a set that they belong to. And these real, irrational, rational, integers, whole numbers, naturals, those are considered sets. So the real is the big set, and all these other smaller ones are part of it. So they're called what's called subsets. So when you think of 15, what does this number, the number 15, belong to? Well, the number 15 belongs in rational. That's the big one. Okay. It also is an integer because it's a whole number. It is a whole number and it is a natural number. Now, the number negative 1.4583, that belongs to the rational numbers because I can write negative 1.4583 as a fraction, and it's also a real number. Radical 57. If I punch radical 57 on my calculator, it does not come out as a nice pretty number like a 1, a 2, a 3, or a 4. So radical 57 is considered an irrational number. So why don't you go ahead and take a moment and pause the video, see if you can come up with what subsets the guy that's come up with. Okay, and I'll see you back here in about a minute. Now, if I want to, what's the inequality that compares the numbers radical 17 and 4 and 1/3? The easiest thing I can do to compare these guys is what I would do is grab my calculator and I would punch square root of 17. Square root of 17. Square root of 17 is 4.123, and then 4 and 1/3. I'm going to go 4 plus 1 divided by 3, and that gets me 4.333. So 4.333. So which number is bigger, radical 17 or 4 and a third? Well, 4 and a third is bigger, so I'm going to go radical 17 is less than 4 and 1/3. See how I used my calculator to help me out, and I rewrote it in the non-calculator form? Why don't you take a moment, see if you can do the got it for that, comparing those two, the other two numbers. And I'll meet you back here in about a minute. All right, let's talk about graphing and ordering real numbers. All right, so this one we'll actually talk about in class. So don't worry about doing this in your guide notes. We'll start this off in class on the next day. Take some time and see if you know how to know the definitions of square root, rational numbers, irrational numbers, and real numbers, and mark where you belong. But we will pick up in class with problem number 5. Hopefully this helps. I look forward to seeing you in class tomorrow, and may the force be with you.